Okay, so this is Unit 2B, the classwork. We're going to look at numbers 14. To start off, they give us the coordinate -4/3, -2.5, and with a slope equal to 0. So, like we talked about, we're going to utilize our slope formula. So we're going to have y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. And we're just going to plug in the different values that they give us into the equation. So the slope, they said the slope is 0, so we're plugging that in for our m. That's our slope. So we're going to plug that in for 0. I'm going to plug it in for 0. We look at our y's. So let's say this is y2. Again, it doesn't matter if I pick this as y2 or this is y2 as long as I'm consistent. So I'm picking this as my y2. So y2 is y minus my -2.5 all over my x's. So that's my x2, this is my x1. All right, so I have my y coordinates in red, my x coordinates in purple, and my slope in 0. So hopefully you see where everything came from. Now let's go through and kind of work this equation and talk about where some people had difficulties with this week. So I always rewrite my equation when I start working, just because I like to have a good kind of blank slate to start with. It helps to keep me organized, and it also helps as I think about the problem to kind of reset my brain. So you may want to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is 2 minus a -4/3. And I'm going to rewrite that. So 2 plus 4/3. I know that 4/3 is the same as, well, let me move that up. I'm sorry, you guys. So 2 plus 4/3. So I know that 4/3 is the same as 1 1/3. 3 goes into 4 one time, making a whole, and I'm left with 1 extra, so 1 1/3. And again, take note, every time I do something, I rewrite it with that one little change, so that way I can track if I've made a mistake and see where I've made my problem, where I've made my mistake at. Going over, I'm going to have my y plus 2.5, 2 plus 1/3. So 2 plus 1/3 is just 3 1/3. So then 0 equals y plus 2.5, 3 1/3. Now, what we've talked about in class is, if we're scared of fractions, is turning them into decimals. That's perfectly okay to do. If you want to do it that way, feel free. For the sake of today, I am not going to turn it into, well, for the sake of today, I'm not going to turn it into a fraction. Turn it into a decimal, just so I can show a different way to approach it and attack it, so that way, hopefully, you guys get more comfortable with the fractions. So, first thing I'm going to do, 3 1/3, I am simply going to do the opposite. So right here, it's underneath the denominator, which means we're dividing with it. So what I'm going to do is to multiply 3 1/3 times both sides. And by doing that, what I can do is I can cancel out my 3 1/3, and it works out well for me over here. 3 1/3 times 0 is just 0. So now I have this equation: 0 is equal to y plus 2.5. And I want to get y by itself. So y will be subtracted from both sides. And what I'll get, I'm sorry, I forgot my paper. What I'll get, the y's over here will cancel out, and y will be equal to negative 2.5. And that's just my answer. So it does look like I took a lot of steps. It looks like I did a lot of work. Again, my thing is, I do this much work so I don't make small errors in my minus signs. Specifically here, take note, like I said, where a lot of you guys made mistakes this week on the classwork was when we had a negative point, you forget to add this negative sign, thinking that the subtraction sign took place of it. It doesn't. You have to put them both there. What happens is they become plus signs. It becomes an addition problem. So make sure you catch that and make sure you watch for that as you do your work over the weekend and as we come back. The second place people got stuck was right here. They would have some weird thing underneath an equation, and they would say, well, what do I do with this weird number, or what do I do with this weird equation? Just treat it like a number, okay? It's in the denominator, so it's being divided. So just take it and do the opposite of it when you want to get rid of it and multiply it by both sides, which is what we did, okay? That eliminates it over here, and we're just left with a regular fraction. I'm sorry, regular equation. All right, let's take a look at another one. So let's take a look at number 18. So number 18, 2 and negative 15 are the points. They give me negative 19 and y. And my slope is 1/7. Okay, so again, step by step, piece by piece, I'm going to go slowly and methodically. I have my equation, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, and I'm going to plug in this will be my y2, this will be my y1, and this will be my x2, this will be my x1, and this will be my slope. So let's write my equation. My slope is 1/7, and that's going to be equal to y2 minus y1, so that's in orange. So y minus a negative 15, again, making sure I take into account, and x2 minus x1, which will give me negative 19 minus 2. So again, color-coded so you don't lose track. My oranges are my y's, my purple is my slope, and my blues are my x's, okay? So I'm going to go through, and again, we're not going to get scared by this piece under here. We're not going to get thrown off by this. So now we'll rewrite it, and we'll have, I'm going to use brown as a marker. It doesn't get enough love. So 1/7 is going to equal y. And again, remember we said this right here, this minus sign and this negative sign become a plus sign, becomes an addition problem. And negative 19 minus 2 on the bottom. So I go through, do my first piece. Again, I have this subtraction problem underneath. So I have 1/7 y plus 15 and negative 19 minus 2 gives me negative 21. So we're not going to be thrown off by this because, again, we know this is a division problem because it's in the denominator. So to do the opposite of division, the opposite of it, we're going to multiply. So that means we're going to multiply negative 21 by both sides. So we'll have, if we were to rewrite it over, and again, I think this is where some people got stuck. They said, well, what is negative 21 times 1/7? How do I do that? Well, let's write negative 21 as a fraction. So if we write it as a fraction, it's negative 21 over 1 times 1/7. And so we just multiply straight across. So we have negative 21 over 7. And these negative 21s cancel out. So negative 21 divided by 7 is just negative 3. So y plus 15. And again, I want my y by itself. So I subtract negative 15 from both sides. So I get negative 18 is equal to y. And we're done. So we're going to do one last one with x in the denominator. I'm sorry, with x as the missing coordinate. Let's take a look at number 17. I know this is out of order. I want to make sure we had the basic premise down first. So this is unit 2B classwork and number 17. So we have x1 and negative 5, comma 4, and our slope is equal to negative 1/3. So again, start off the same way, do the same exact steps every time, so that way we don't have to think about it. Write my slope equation. M is equal to y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. And we just plug in. My y2 is 4, my y1 is 1. My x2 is negative 5, and my x1 is going to just be x. And my slope, of course, is negative 1/3. So let's go through and do some math. So contrary to what we just did, the subtraction problem is now on the top. So we'll have 4 minus 1 is 3. And negative 5 minus x is still on the bottom. And that still is equal to negative 1/3. So again, when we were faced with this during the week, a lot of us became stuck and said, well, what do I do? And we began to try to, multiply by x and add x and just kind of forget that it was in the denominator. We can't do that. The thing is, and I'm going to write this a little bit bigger so I can draw on it. So what's in the bottom here is still something we're dividing by, okay? And the rules still apply. We still do the same steps. I want to get x by itself, and I need it up top in the numerator, obviously. So the only way I can do that is to multiply both sides by this whole packet that I have here in red. So I multiply both sides by this. So what ends up happening is on my right-hand side, they cancel out. On my left-hand side, what ends up happening, again, this is a multiplication sign, not a minus sign. What ends up happening is all of this, if I write it as a fraction, is over 1, and I multiply straight across. So I'll end up with so to back up, all I did was I started here, and I said, well, this isn't going to work for me. This is in the denominator. I don't even know how to deal with the variable in the denominator, so I adjusted it. I addressed it by, let me multiply and cancel it out over here, and get it in the numerator over here. So now once I've done that, and let me rewrite it. We are back to where we were in the previous problems. So I have a -3 here. I don't want that, so I want to multiply both sides by that -3. Which lets me cancel out my -3's. I'm left with -5 minus x. And 3 times -3 is just -9. Add 5 to both sides. So -x will equal -4. And this did cause a little bit of issue. If this is a -x, just flip everything, okay? So change this sign, and x is just equal to 4. All right, that ends 2B. We'll do one more for 2C, and then you'll be good for the week. Do not forget, if you have me on Tuesday, I will not be there, so you will have a review of everything from Unit 1 up to what we're doing now in Unit 2.